What's up? Brandon Lilly here. Getting ready to take three questions from about 25 or so that were submitted. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to submit those. So I'm just going to go ahead and fire these off. First question comes in from Ryan. Why would one choose single ply over multiply if not doing raw? I mean, I guess that goes to what kind of gym is around you, what kind of athletes you train with, experience of the lifters that you train with. There just wasn't anybody really training single ply in my area. I know Texas has a lot of single ply guys. Some of the northern states have a ton of single ply guys. I mean, they're everywhere, but it just seems like certain areas have certain affiliation because of federations and things like that. But you know, for me, in all honesty, the single ply gear has progressed so much. It's really just as strong in many cases as the multiply stuff. I mean, you're seeing single ply bench shirts that are producing 900-pound bench presses, and to me, the old bench shirts or the way they were. I mean, I did a couple of single ply meets back in the day, and the Enzer Blast shirt that I used might net you 40 pounds, maybe 50 pounds if you were good in it. That was a closed back single ply Enzer Hardcore Blast shirt or whatever. So it's radicalized just as much as the multiply is. To say, oh, I'm doing this the way the guys were years back. No, you're not. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. If we're going to try to, define what this sport is and where it's going and what it's becoming, the single ply gear is just getting as ridiculous as the multiply gear. Not to say that they're comparable, as far as a single ply lifter won't be able to do some of the things that a multiply lifter will. But the gear is getting out of hand altogether. So, I think it's personal preference. I think it's whatever federations you like. The USPA is doing a really good job of trying to cater to raw, single ply, and now multiply. They just added that. Other federations like the USPF have always catered more to raw, well, more recently raw, but single ply. And, federations like the SPF, they're kind of multiply heavy and raw heavy, and every now and then you'll see a few single ply guys pop up here and there. But like I said, it's just more or less where you're from, who you train with, the federation affiliations and things like that. I don't think it's somebody just wakes up and says, you know what, fuck single ply, I'm going multiply, or fuck multiply, I'm going to be single ply. It's just probably more dictated by who you train with and federation. I know I kind of rambled on that, sorry. But the next question comes in from Josh. The number one deadlift accessory exercise. If I had to pick one for myself, it would be the snatch grip deadlift off of blocks. That's been something that's really, really, really helped my back. It's helped from my lower back to my middle back to my upper back. It's helped my hamstrings. It's helped my glutes. Basically, what I do is I take anywhere from a 2-inch block up to an 8-inch block, and I grab almost out to the collars, and I try to get a really rounded back or really bent position to where I'm using almost all of my back and just very little of my legs to lift the weight with that wide snatch grip. And it's put a lot of mass on my back, I believe. It's really worked things that weren't working before when I was just trying to do conventional deadlifting or sumo deadlifting. I just didn't feel the same kind of work being done. And the best way I can describe it is it's somewhere between like a stiff leg deadlift and a barbell row as far as the fatigue factor and the work factor. So for me, that's going to be my number one. For somebody else, it might be deficit deadlifts, it might be block deadlifts, rack pulls. It's all individual, but for me, it's going to be the snatch grip deadlift has been crucial for my development. Let's get one more here. Another question came in about low bar versus high bar. Look back at the past couple days' videos. I touched on that a little bit more in depth, but basically it's up to you, There's no right or wrong answer. Cody sends in a question, where to put your feet on the bench to maximize leg drive? Well, again, I'm going to give you a tip that Mark Bell gave me that really radicalized the way I was thinking. I used to tuck my feet pretty heavily, and even in that tuck position, what was happening was my knees were almost in a straight line with my hip joint. So here was my knees, here was my hip joint, and they were in a straight line. And what would happen whenever I was going to press down on the floor is my glutes would come off the bench every single time. So by taking my feet out a little bit and widening my stance, if you will, I was able to put my knees below my glute or my hip joint, and then when I would press down, I was in a leverage position that I couldn't fire my glutes off the bench. This is a very, very personal, answer. I have 8 to 10 guys that I know of in our gym, just in my gym, that bench with different foot positions, and all of them work well for those guys. So, the things that I tell people, number one, have your knee joint below your hip joint. That's a mainstay for everybody that benches well that I've seen. That is one of the common factors. Practice both with your feet flat and your heel raised. I've even been doing the Olympic shoes because I like to hover my heel, but in that Olympic shoe I make full contact. So that readies me for whatever kind of federation rule there is. Whether they say I can hover, whether they say I can have my feet down, I'm covered. So, and the other thing, I always flex my glutes and I flex my quads hard, not just flexing them, but I push down, like I'm trying to push my hips down to my knees. And I know it's hard to describe, but it's actually something that elevates the pelvis a little bit more. And I guess think of it as like trying to pull your knees to the ground, and that will pull your pelvis into a locked position, which will make it that much harder to elevate your glutes. And lastly, I'm a pretty flat back bencher. I don't arch for a shit. I wish I could. I have some issues with my back that prevent that. But the last thing that I do is in that widened position, my feet are wide like this. I'm pushing down towards the ground, but I'm also, with the inside of my legs, the adductors, I'm flexing those as well, pulling in towards the bench just a little bit. And then whenever you hear people say leg drive, so many people think of pressing down through the floor, but actually what you want to do is push your head as if you were trying to push your head off the bench, because that will rock you back on your traps and automatically elevate your chest. And doing that will give you a shorter pressing stroke. It'll give your shoulders the leverage to push harder, and then, it's going to be a smoother bench. It's going to be a better leverage bench press for you. So those are the 3 questions for today. I'm going to be in Vegas tomorrow. I'll try to get a couple questions from people that you might recognize, and we'll go from there. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll do this again tomorrow and the next day. See you then.